Hey, so sorry, world, you got to miss our discussion about Ilya's pizza, whether it's 9 or 3 slices. It's 3, but they advertise 9.
Right.
That is what's behind me on my.
9 pieces that are that big.
Yeah, so we're gonna end it at 1:55 today because Tortorella, the press conference to end all press conferences will begin. But between now and then, we're gonna do you a show and keep you up to date. So consider this the it's the preview show,
the Tortorella pre-show. There you go.
The Tortorella pre-show. All right, here we go. But what's up? What else is going on, Russ?
So today's a historic day for the WWE. Vince McMahon has actually been asked to step aside because there's a scandal going on right now within the WWE, and it involves him. And this isn't a gimmick. Like in the past, he's had his son fill in Shane, and he's had his daughter fill in Stephanie. But Stephanie actually is now the acting CEO because there's an actual panel that they had to hire. We got to remember the WWE is a corporation, and they have shareholders to answer to. It's not just a gimmick wrestling league. It's a $1 billion business. So this is a big deal. This could end Vince McMahon's career with the WWE. It doesn't sound good. I will say that.
No, when you pay $3 million of corporate funds to silence somebody who you allegedly I say had an affair with, that's not legal. Now, if it's your own personal funds, fine. If it's corporate funds, nope, can't doesn't work.
Yeah, I thought you were going to say that the big scandal was that wrestling is fake. Yeah,
no, they already admitted that.
That's why I thought.
No, this is actually real life.
Yeah, this was actually not fooling around.
This is like the one time nobody's fooling around in WWE. Like this is actually real.
Although Russ, I'm almost surprised that it didn't happen years ago. Remember when he had that interview on Real Sports, and it was almost a Jim Everett, Jim Rome type of thing where he started to get, I think it was Bernard Goldberg, where I think Goldberg was like almost like physically threatened because Vince looked like he was about to blow his stack, and then it sort of backed off.
But in that era, it was okay to do that. Like that era, you got away with stuff like that.
Yeah,
because
there are people who believe that. There are people that believe that Everett and Rome was fake, that it was all set up. Yeah, there are people who believe that. So
I would buy that. I mean, there's one thing about these guys. It's like I've always said this, like it's forever. Like like take like a Russ, like a Russ Farwell, or just take anybody controversial like Howard Stern, or take the other some like guy from
Joe Rogan.
Take Joe Rogan or a guy from Fox News, whatever. They're all very stern. They're all very strong on one side of things. But if they're all smart enough that you wanted to, you could just ask them tomorrow, and they could flip and do the exact opposite side just as well.
Sure.
Yeah, it's just it's the lawyer thing. It's what I always said about which didn't neither of the gentlemen appreciated it. But if you ask during a CBA to say, okay, we're going to have reverse Wednesday, and Donald Fear had to argue for the league, and Bill Daly or Gary Bettman had to argue for the union. Both of them would, they would do a great job for whatever, because they're just, they're lawyers who have negotiating skills, and you got to do that kind of thing. So,
and I do think there's a lot of like Tucker Carlson could do.
Yeah, Tucker Carlson worked on CNN and MSNBC. Now he was like on the right for the old CNN crossfire, but he was never as conservative as he has been on Fox News the last few years. In fact, I don't even consider him conservative. In some aspects, I consider him sort of a reactionary. So it's like he's sort of gone above and beyond, because he was sort of a Casper Milquetoast type of guy. It was really not consistent with what he is now.
Those talking heads, or some of them are just really good at just being talking heads and taking whatever side they want to take. Like it doesn't really matter what they are.
I think there are some of them that actually believe what they spout. Like I think Rush Limbaugh was pure. I mean Rush Farwell. Rush Farwell's the old guy. Rush Limbaugh, man. Yeah, I know. That's why I said it.
I wanted Rush Limbaugh and Howard Stern to like one day just switch jobs, way back in the day. Because I think they could. But maybe Rush Limbaugh was that far to that side or whatever.
Well, Stern, I think is a chameleon, because he has changed dramatically.
Yeah, he's a chameleon. Well, the only thing I know about Limbaugh is he used to be the voice at one of the baseball parks, maybe the Orioles. No, the Washington.
No. He was I think he was Kansas City. He worked for the Royals because he's from.
And so he was he was the baseball voice at the ballpark for a while. So that was a long time.
There's a guy in Philly who you guys wouldn't know, but he was on Philly Talk Radio forever, and he was very very famous. And Smirkanis, Mike Smirkanis?
Yeah, I know.
All right,
he's
so
on MSNBC now.
He's on MSNBC now. Yes, he's been in Philly radio forever, and he's a fan of my bands, and I've met him many times. He would come to their shows and I would talk to him, and he was the first person to ever tell me that. He's like, yeah, I mean, to argue one side, to be strongly in one camp, you have to fully understand the other camp.
Mm-hmm.
And if
did he leave CNN?
No, I think he's still in CNN occasionally, right? Like he has a big show on XM. I know now.
Yeah,
well, he does a Saturday morning show. I watch him.
Yeah, he's great
on CNN. Yeah,
I think he's phenomenal. He's right. He tries to be right down the middle, but he's really good, and he is.
No, you know what? Nobody is right down the middle anymore. It's like that is death. You have to take one side or the other on any of these news stations. Otherwise, you're I don't think you're like Chris Wallace tried to be down the middle, and he got laid off by the Fox let him go.
Yeah, I know. There are people.
He went someplace else, but
anyway,
CNN. He went to CNN.
He went to the CNN Plus, and that crapped out after like 3 weeks. And now you have to put out an APB out for Chris Wallace because you haven't seen him.
Yeah,
true.
I always had some respect for that guy. Anyway, all right, here we go. Let's do this. Hello, Hockey World. It is Friday, June 17th, 2022.
I'm Michael Agello, and the Lamb lies down on Broadway.
I'm Russ Cohen from Sportsology.
I'm Kevin Allen, and again, I don't know what any of that means. So
it's a Genesis album.
And I'm Eklund. You're watching HockeyBuzzcast on HockeyBuzz.com. This is the podcast that comes every Monday through Friday to fill you in on the comings and goings of the hockey world. And we don't have a game to talk about again because the game is not tonight. Like it should.
But we have plenty to talk about.
Why
don't we hold off on Torts until Anthony gets here because he's coming on in about 15 minutes. Can we talk about the very interesting trade that happened yesterday? Because
the Shea Weber, we were all waiting for this to drop, right? And Shea Weber was going to go someplace that needed cap relief, and there is no place in the world that needs more cap relief than the Vegas Golden Knights. We should have seen this coming in a way, but
there's a bunch of teams that could use it though.
Yeah, there were a bunch of teams that were in on it when everybody was talking about, that the Minnesota Wild had. First dibs, and they were working on it. I was told that there were half a dozen teams that were trying to make
I think the Flyers were probably made a call too.
So
it was just, and it's an interesting deal. I do think, at the end of the day, Montreal made a pretty smart move by getting a guy that I think can help them.
Well, they got a tradable asset. That's what they got.
Tradable asset, right? Who can help them and could be moved at the deadline.
Yes.
Right. He's a body that'll be able to play for them next year, and then they can trade at the deadline for a draft pick. But the LTIR, this does make a lot of sense from the Montreal perspective. They would have had, and we don't know what's going to happen with Carey Price right now. But if Carey Price can't play, between him and Weber, it would have been $18 million on LTIR, and that would have been crippling for them. They would not have any kind of flexibility. So by making this move, they bail out of 3 years on Weber's deal.
Right.
They give Vegas cap flexibility because they're going to go into LTIR, and all the things that we thought about Vegas now, I think, have changed. I don't think they'll trade Pacioretty now, and I think they'll be able to sign Riley Smith now because they're going to go into LTIR, and they don't.
There's a real good story out there that really lays it out. They actually still have difficulty, because they've got a bunch of guys they want to sign, and they're guys that aren't sexy names, but they want to get them done. So they're still going to have to work a little bit to get it all and get everyone to take a little less. But Cap Friendly talked about something that I really didn't even know about, and maybe other people did. But Cap Friendly said that one of the reasons, too, why you don't like LTIR, it's very helpful in terms of when you want to, add, talent to your roster, and it helps you, kind of beat the system a little bit, as we'd like to say. But it's also costly because you can't prorate moves based on having that. So each time you send someone up and down, you're paying the whole hit on that. and you end up with a lot of overages. So even though it seems like it's a panacea,
Right.
It can really kind of screw you up.
Interesting.
So, and I really had not even given that any
I
thought.
didn't know that either.
And that's probably the reason why, because we heard Weber and Minnesota act for a while.
Yeah.
And there were reports out there that Minnesota looked into the ramifications of that, just what Kevin talked about, and determined that it wouldn't help them as much as they would have liked. I mean, that they have 12 million in dead cap space, 14 million and 14 million the next 2 years after that.
Right.
And Weber's 7.8 would have helped them a little bit, but probably not enough to warrant them making that deal.
Right. And so it is something that Vegas had to do. I don't know if Riley Smith. I'm still hearing that Riley Smith could be gone though. I don't know.
Oh, they want desperately to keep him. I think he's the highest priority.
He is the highest priority, no question about it.
Now, if he is that highest priority, then maybe they still will trade Pacioretty, because Pacioretty's 1 year at $7 million, and he's been injured the last couple years. And he's an effective player when he's healthy. But if it's keeping Riley Smith long term as opposed to 1 year Pacioretty, then
I mean, I don't think it's an either or. I think they can do both.
Yeah, I think they're going to do both.
Don't forget Dadnoff takes off too, so you're really taking out that's 12 million.
Yeah.
Change. So I think they can get both of those, but it's those other guys that they're trying to figure out.
Yeah.
So
I mean, Dadnoff is an interesting player too. I mean, he really has had an interesting year, of course, because he was traded, got on an airplane, actually flew to Anaheim. I didn't even realize that during the trade deadline. I didn't know that he actually went there. Like, we all thought like what was going on,
No,
like,
I figured he did. He
actually went to I thought it was so almost instantly that something was wrong with that deal. It felt like that he wouldn't have had time to get a train, but he did. And,
but the guys that you're talking about, Kev, Nicholas Hague, who is an RFA, Howden is an RFA, Nicolas Roy is an RFA with arbitration rights. So there's three players that aren't going to be big money, but it'll add up.
Yeah, they will, and that's the issue. And they're players that they want and need. And I think there's 5 or 6 of them actually. And I think there's some RFAs.
Janmark and Riley Smith are the UFAs. Howden, Rock, Keegan Colasar, and Hague are the RFAs. Yeah,
so it'll be interesting. I thought that the Anaheim Ducks had the funniest response to the deal, where they put out on their Twitter, "Are we sure?
Are you sure?" Yes.
Saying that he was traded to Montreal. So
their Twitter PR deserves an award for that one. But
for sure. All right, so then after that, what's up? What else you have, Mike? To avoid torts. The interesting. Okay, and I just wrote about this. So Nick Kyprios reported that Sergei Bobrovsky is being shopped hard by the Florida Panthers. Now, this is the question. You've got a $10 million goaltender for 4 more years, who's 33 years old. He's won 2 Vezina trophies. Will there be interest? Sure. Will there be enough interest that a team would be willing to take most of that salary? I don't think so. Now, the report says that Florida will retain significant money. Yeah, they'll have to.
I don't know what that means. Does that mean $2 million? Does it mean $3 million? I mean, if you make him a $5 million goalie, meaning retaining 50%, I think you'd have a bunch of teams interested. But I don't think that helps Bill Zito out, because he wants to sign Mackenzie Weegar after this year. He wants to sign Huberdeau to an extension. They need to clear more money than that.
He wants to keep Giroux. That's the thing. So that's what's going on here too.
And he wants to keep Giroux too. There you
go. So to me, remember, Zito is incredibly smart. Like, of all the people I've ever met, that's what I've said about him since the very beginning. Since I met him back during the non-season lockout, he's one of the smartest guys, and he always comes. He's fascinating to talk to, because he'll tell you, well, what if I did this, and he'll throw those things out to you. And I haven't had this discussion with him on this thing, but I know the way he would do it. if he gets another team involved here, like he could very easily get another team involved here, and
easily. I don't know if he easily can.
He has.
Oh, this is a bridge too far. Like easily getting a third.
I mean, he is easily.
Well, first of all, actually explain what you mean by using a third party here, and then we can determine whether.
Yeah, like another team to take some salary take some salary with us, like
but it's a 4-year hit. That's the
4-year hit. What is the other thing? So another team to take on. So he doesn't have to take on $5 million of it. Maybe he has to take on.
Yeah, this is what I would say about that. Like Steve Yzerman is one of those guys that he's done this before.
Yeah.
But he has said publicly, for a year, I'm always willing to help. Anything beyond that,
you're on your own.
Yeah.
It's the number of years because, he's in a rebuilding. He doesn't know quite where he's going to be in a couple of years, So he said it's hard. He said it's hard to do that for longer situations. That's what I thought you meant. So I'm on the side of it would be challenging.
I'm not saying it wouldn't be challenging, and I shouldn't have said easily.
And they don't have the draft picks to convince somebody. They've traded their first round picks for the next 3 years. So, somebody's not going to retain $3 million of Sergei Bobrovsky's contract for a second round pick.
They only have 2 picks, I think, in this draft.
Yeah. So, I mean, it would be unless they're going to give up somebody young, like a Denisenko or something like that. I don't know how you convince a team to retain that. That's why I'm like, okay, if he retains half, then I think there'll be teams interested. But I don't think
that doesn't help.
That doesn't help enough. They need to clear as much of the $10 million as possible. They have a projected starter in Spencer Knight ready to step in. Maybe he's ready, maybe he's not ready. But I think they're at this point where if they want to keep the players in front of the goalie, they're going to have to make hard decisions.
Yeah, this is a pipe.
I don't think retaining half is impossible for them. I mean, I think that. I mean, it is with the cap not going up over the next 2 years now, right? So that's going to be an issue for sure. But then after that, it's not really that big of an issue. What about Bobrovsky's contract? Is it the same amount of pay? Does it decrease in pay? Is there a salary bonus or anything like that?
I'm checking right now.
That's I wonder too. Like if it helps on team that way.
Yeah, he's okay. So it's a $10 million cap hit. The salary next year is $12 million. 10 million in next year. Then it goes down to 6.5 and 6. Good luck.
Last 2 years are not the best.
Last 2 years, but then that's when you might be able to trade him. Not right now.
You're not trading next year. This year.
No, that's $12 million.
And half of the money that I just mentioned is signing bonus. The next 2 years. So $6 million, $5 million.
Right.
Bob's got a seat right next to the cannon. He's safe. He's as safe as the cannon.
No, the cannon's in Columbus. He's got a seat next to the empty seats in Florida.
I mean, I think that what Mike said right off the bat is the truth here. It's the 4 years. Like even no matter how much it is, like the only team that would even consider it would be somebody like Arizona. And how much? What would you have to get them to do that? And I still don't even think they do it because that's real money to them.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I don't know. I mean that to me that just seems, could you get someone like if you were willing to retain, somebody to take and then get somebody to do $1 million, maybe, like I bet
the team that gets him, he's a middle of the league goaltender. Like he's not anything special.
Yeah, no, that is the issue. I mean, his numbers are above average, but
he's
better
than the middle of the league, but not by much. I'd say he's like top 12.
Yeah, and your other point was a good one too. He's 33 years old.
Yeah.
So that's the other issue as well.
And he's had injury issues. We know.
That I share your belief that Zito's a magic man, but boy, that would.
I don't know. I mean, the thing that he models himself after, Lamoriello and New Jersey, and also really a ton of respect for the way Tampa's done things. And I think that, that what's not known is that there's a really good relationship between the Tampa management and him, that they really get along, that they met in the bubble, and he talked to them a lot and learned a lot from them.
Yeah, but as an example, in the uncapped world, Lou had to give the Sharks a first rounder to get rid of Malakoff's salary even in an uncapped world, he doesn't even have a first this year.
And the problem here, Ak, is that and I'm sure I'm sure he likes what the Lightning have done in terms of going out and getting Nick Paul and Hagel. The Panthers have shot their bolt. They don't have a first round pick in 22, 23, 24. They don't have second round picks in 22 and 24. They don't have a third round pick in 23. They have 3 picks in the first 3 rounds the next 3 years.
Oh, for sure. No, they're not going to be a team that builds through the draft. I mean,
no.
Yeah, but really? you need draft picks to get.
You need draft picks to trade.
Yeah.
So I get that. Yeah, if you see, like Tampa also hasn't had first round picks very often, and the same.
But they have draft picks. They generally have 4 or 5 picks every draft.
And they've hit on those draft picks previously, so they have enough of a reservoir of young talent still in the organization that they can bring up players, and they'll sign the occasional free agent here or there. I mean, like a undrafted free agent, they have a good eye for talent, but
they would have to trade like their best prospect, Denisenko, to get some picks, just to trade it in another trade. Like they're going to have to burn more assets that they can't replace because they don't have enough draft picks.
Right.
We'll see. We'll see what they do. It'll be fascinating. Yeah. I agree with everything you guys are saying. I'm not disagreeing with it. I'm fascinated. Like when I hear, and I have not heard, by the way, that Bobrovsky's being actively shopped, and I've talked to people down there, and I haven't heard that. But I think that when you hear that, I ask myself, wow, okay, so how's not like if it's going to happen, but how's he going to do that? There are ways he's going to. I don't know what they are.
I would predict right now the first move that they make to open up cap space will be to buy out Hornquist, because he's a $5.3 million cap hit, and if they buy him out, they save over $3 million in cap space. Not that he's still not an effective player, but a big
person in their locker room too. Like that's an interesting thing. I don't know. I think that would make sense economically. Yes.
The problem is for Florida, if they don't win in a couple of years, they're going down a bad path too.
Oh, for sure.
They're already halfway down that path.
Oh, they're not halfway down that path.
Yeah, they're halfway down that path.
I mean, their players are still. All their good players are still young, and they're still in a good shape, and they have good players coming.
No, but it's all the other that they've had to surround them with. They can't win with just those good young players. That's the problem.
Up until last year, they had Barkov and Huberdeau on gift contracts. Huberdeau was 5'9", and Barkov I think was 6. Now Barkov's making 10. You've added Bennett. You've added Reinhardt. You've got Bobrovsky at $10 million. You don't have enough.
You're not telling the full story there, Mike, because they've added players that are young, and those guys are going to be around.
I don't know how many years. I think it's only one more year for Duclair.
So, but I'm saying the one thing that you're also not pointing out, and this is why Zito is Zito, is, and I've pointed this out many times. He changed 14 players his first year, and without hardly any impact on his salary cap. Right. He just moved the shells around.
But you can't do that every year, Kev.
No, but you can change a lot of players, and those. I mean, X Point is a good one. Those are really great core players. They're going to be around for a while.
Yeah.
And he can sort of move guys in and out, and do those. And you got to get he had some luck too. I mean, no one. I think he thought Verhaeghe was a real good roll of the dice, but he was still a roll of the dice. No one thought he was going to be the player that he is.
But he signed, and he signed him for like a crazy reasonable contract.
Yeah.
And the other thing that Huberdeau, he's making 5.9 this year, and he's a UFA after next season. He's 30 years old. I didn't realize he was that old.
That's going to be a tough decision, the Huberdeau one.
Yeah. How willing are they going to be to sign him to an 8-year contract when that he's not going to be good for 8 years?
Don't forget too that there are people like Huberdeau is very entrenched there. He likes it there, and also the tax differences in Florida.
Sure, he can take a little less, but he's going to make it now.
And isn't that part of Florida?
Yeah.
Basically Canada South, like Quebec South,
Yeah.
So,
yeah.
So I think they'll figure that out somehow with Huberdeau. So
now
it's going to be hard though. I was going to bring up something here because you're going to hear it anyway. because I think it's kind of interesting too. The sound you may have heard was I'm at the lake house, and my neighbor here is 91 years old, and he mows his own lawn. I pay to have my lawn back. Okay, and he's 91, and he's out there, every week mowing his lawn. And I would argue that the reason he's 91 is he goes out and mows his lawn.
Well, I still mow my lawn, and I'm not paying anybody, so we'll see.
It's so funny to say this. I'm shopping for a riding mower.
And we have big lots here. You know what I mean? I don't know how big your lot is, but
no, it's not like yours. I've seen yours.
I'm 55 years old, and I haven't mowed a lawn in 25 years.
Yeah. So, well, the only reason we don't mow our lawn here is because we're not here all the time. So you don't want it to be bad. So we just have someone.
Yeah, that makes total sense. I mean, we've had people cut it, but I finally decided I'm going to get a riding mower because I always wanted to do that.
Yeah.
Now, the other big news that came out, and we're holding off on torts for a few minutes here, and the Stanley Cup Final, was the announcement that the Nashville Predators are being sold to Bill Haslam, the former governor of Tennessee, who was the brother of Jimmy Haslam, the owner of the Cleveland Browns. Which, that organization is so well run right now.
Stellar.
Yeah. So I mean.
Hopefully his brother's different. We'll give him a chance.
Now, the reported price was something in the range of $680 million, which is a pretty good price for a fairly storied franchise that we know the difficulties that they had a few years ago. Those are by the wayside now. They seem to be firmly established in Tennessee. But they've had pretty stable ownership for a while, so it's a little bit of surprise that there was going to be a switch in ownership.
Yeah, it's surprising to me that they'd be willing to sell that team because it really finally has turned the corner. They still believe they've got to make the playoffs and they've got to be good. Like they don't think they can go south and expect, the support that they've had, right now. But they're still, a very popular item in town. And, there's a lot going on in Nashville. So even though, they don't have that represented in all the sports. There's still so much going on in the music industry and everything else. There's a lot of rivals for the entertainment dollar. So, I guess the best time to sell is when you're doing real well and the Predators are doing real well. So
I just hope the brother has a little sense of loyalty for David Poyle's sake, but Jim Haslam has no loyalty. So if he takes after him in any way, David Poyle's going to have to watch out in a year.
Yeah, it'll be. The one thing that I don't think anybody knows is how long David wants to go.
Right.
He's approaching, Lou Lamoriello territory. So.
Yeah. No, I mean, it's made. They really have done such a good job at carving out a little niche in Nashville as far as the entertainment. And it's just how far it's come is just so awesome. I mean, because I was there when it was struggling. You saw it struggle. It's just seeing how it's grown.
Yeah, it's really fascinating. I don't know yet. I think that they're catching on, but because you hear a lot of people saying, I'm going down to take a trip to Nashville. I'm going to watch the Predators play. But really, it's become kind of that kind of place, which is kind of important. I remember I did a story like in the playoffs. They get an old car and they drag it down to the entrance of the arena, and for charity. They give you a sledgehammer and you get the whomp on it for a while. Yeah. And I did a story on it. It didn't do very well at USA Today in terms of number of readers. And I remember saying to my boss, if they did that in Pittsburgh or Toronto or Philadelphia, and I wrote that same story, I would have done well just because the Predators just didn't have a national following. But so, but they do some really cool things. One of my favorite things, which is never gets enough play, is during the playoff game, they bring all the employees out and they greet you as you come in the door.
Yeah, that's great. That's a great thing.
It's just a cool thing. So you got all these Predators employees and you're coming into the game and you're excited about the playoff game. And there's, every 10 feet, an employee saying, hey, welcome to, to the Predators game and welcome to Bridgestone Arena. And I hope you have a great time,
Yeah,
it's really neat. So
it's unlike any other, like, and I've said it many times, unlike any other experience in the league. And it is, if you're good, if someone asks me where should I go to see a game that's not in my own building, I'm always going to tell them there. I mean, that's where you should go. I mean, obviously you should go to Montreal, you should go to Toronto and all those, and there are places in Canada that are phenomenal. But if you're going to go somewhere in the U.S. to see a game and have a vacation, that's the place to go.
Have a vacation. That's a different thing. Because if I'm just saying a rink, I'm still going to tell people MSG. But if it's and having a vacation, I get it.
Yeah, all aspect. It has a minor league feel to it too, in a way. Just because I don't know why that is, but in all the good things that are minor league, like there's like this. I don't know what it is about it, but there's this feel like it just feels homey, and it feels the stadium isn't gigantic, and it's right there in town, and you walk out and there's people and there's bars right outside too. Which
I wouldn't use the word minor league because that's kind of got a negative connotation. But it's homey.
Homey.
It's homey. It's not quaint isn't right either, but there's a feel about it that it's not like LA, the Staples Center. It's a little cold. You know what I mean?
It's massive, and they've got that LA Live.
Yeah, it doesn't feel like, but not in Nashville. You feel like you're there with 18,000 of your closest friends or whatever.
Right.
So
yeah.
But
some other coaching rumors before we get to the Torts thing. Anthony will be joining us in about 5 minutes. Fluto Shinzawa reported that the two leading candidates to replace Bruce Cassidy in Boston are former New York Rangers head coach David Quinn, who I think, Russ, you said was, and Jay Leach, who you said.
Yeah.
So it sounds like, I mean, to my mind, both of those guys are. I mean, they're good choices. No, but I'm starting to get the feeling that the Bruins are going through a reset, rebuild, and those are two coaches that I think are consistent with that.
I don't think that's it. I think that it's consistent with their insular nature. Like they're like that. This is like Quinn is a Boston guy, right?
He is a mass guy. Yeah. I'm going to be interviewing David Quinn the next day or two. So.
Yeah, he's from Rhode Island,
and he is from the area, so it makes sense.
Yeah.
It is. What's interesting is the very first name that came out after Cassidy was fired that I read online was Leach.
Yeah,
and people were saying, yeah, it's going to be Leach.
Yeah,
because he was at Providence.
Right.
He was the head coach there.
Right.
They really liked him. He left the fold, and now they got a chance to come back. And I think they really want to merge in younger players into this group. And he has a teaching reputation that he can bring them along. So, it makes a lot of sense. And Quinn is very similar in that regard.
He is similar.
Came from the college, although, the younger players weren't always enthralled with him in Rangerville. But,
I think it was 50-50.
I always discount that because, it's like I remember watching a play on Broadway and one of the songs was "Everyone hates their parents, now you hate yours too," and it's the same with coaches. At least there's always somebody on the team that hates the coach.
And if they hired Leach, it would follow the pattern that because Cassidy was coach of the Providence Bruins, and I know he was a former NHL head coach in Washington back.
They are there immensely, yeah.
The other thing is their player development model isn't good right now.
Right.
So if their coach is sort of geared towards that, it would help that.
Right.
Yeah.
And also remembering that Cassidy, there were some things with Cassidy that obviously were personal. There's some personal stuff that went down with Cassidy beyond his coaching ability, I think. And so their natural instinct would be to make sure they get somebody that they know everything about. That they don't want any weird things to happen personally. So they know Leach, they trust them already. And that also helps them a lot.
I honestly think there's been a lot of blame passing in Boston, and Cassidy was the scapegoat. I think their failures are more Cam Neely and Don Sweeney than they were on Bruce Cassidy. All Bruce Cassidy did, I think, was do the best he could with the players that he had on hand. Their free agency and their drafting and their developing have been hideous the last few years.
You just kind of scraped the airfield there. Is that something you can talk about, or what these personal? I mean, that's the first I've heard about this. So.
No, just there were differences in how the players were being played. I heard the stuff I heard about, like that between Neely and and Cassidy and the whole 9 yards there. They love to have one message. Boston loves to have one message.
Yeah. No, I have actually heard that, but I wouldn't consider that a personal issue.
Well,
I would say that is a kind of a team issue because Neely actually even sort of said that.
Yeah, and I think the personal aspect of it is that they want to make sure. Right now, the once you fire your coach, the spotlight comes onto you, right? So the spotlight's on Neely now, and it's on the general manager, and it's on those guys. So the best way to kind of like make sure that they're okay is to bring in somebody that they know will be kind of like behooving to them. Like, Jay Leach is a guy that is their guy. Like he will be he's not going to get a job anywhere else right now as a head coach. He's going to be very happy about being there.
Bergeron's coming back. That's why they did all this. He's coming back.
Yeah, let me just ask you this too: could it be that the Cassidy, Neely, Sweeney situation was just a symbol of they got sick of each other? They had been there together for a while. They had differing ideas of how things were going to be played.
Neely didn't like Cassidy speaking about the players. Like he made that.
Yeah, because I found it very curious once that they sort of dropped the bomb about how. That they had consulted with the players and all that. And then players usually avoid commenting on those situations. And there were multiple players that said, I don't know anything about that. So I wonder if it was more just sort of the tension. And as Mike said, there might have been some scapegoating here too.
I think he did speak to guys. I think he spoke to Bergeron and just a few of those guys, Marchand or whatever. Yeah. And I think that's where they got the idea where Bergeron was like, well, we want Krejci back. And I think that's why they agreed to talk to Krejci, because before that, Sweeney was like, we're not talking to David Krejci. He said it 2 weeks before that thing came out. He said he wasn't talking to Krejci. Then when that came out, all of a sudden he goes, oh, yeah, we're in touch with David Krejci.
I did talk to a player on that team who did blame Krejci not being there on Cassidy last year. Like that, I heard that early on.
Well, and it seems like that's what they did.
I think that was what the team felt, whether it was right or wrong.
Right.
Well, why would it be on Cassidy? Like he didn't sign the check.
I know. But
maybe because Krejci didn't want to play for him anymore.
That's what you're saying. Yeah, I mean, what? But if you remember what Neely said, it was about the younger players were afraid to make mistakes.
And the report that came out about a week ago was saying that the Krug going to St. Louis and that Krejci going to the Czech Republic was on Sweeney, and that
not Cassidy, right,
which is why that I bring up this fact that they do not like when the spotlight is on Sweeney or Neely. They're like, if they start hearing that thing, they're gonna shift that spotlight away.
Right. That's why I think there's some scapegoating here.
But the spotlight in about 20 minutes will be on John Tortorella, Anthony, as we bring Anthony Mangione on the show. And this was a complete shock. I didn't think, nobody thought it was going to be Torts. Come on.
Yeah, absolutely stunning. Well, I think we kind of got a bearing fairly quickly that it was going to be John fairly early in the game, but I think they wanted to see where things went with Barry Trotz. We won't have any sort of information on that in terms of whether or not it was a turn down or the Flyers just decided to move forward. But this was always for all the talent concerns that the Flyers have, there's a very distinct, when you miss the playoffs for 2 consecutive years and miss it as badly as they certainly did this season as much. This, again, we talked about this in our previous show. This is a culture thing. This is a culture thing. They see this as the deepest set issue more than anything else. I think for the team, talent certainly is a big part of that, and that's going to fall on Chuck Fletcher. But now it's going to be a very interesting summer ahead to see what parts are moved, who is moved out, who comes in this circumstance. There are some parts that I think are Torts ready, but there are other parts that I would definitely not necessarily consider to be, quote, Torts ready, or if they're going to stay, they need to become Torts ready.
Yeah, it's easy. I always say, Matthew Barnaby put it out that he spoke to multiple players from Torts' championship team that said there's going to be some players that are not happy on the Flyers. They may even call their agents. I think that's a little over-exaggerated, but I do think there's going to be players that aren't going to be able to catch on. And whether John knows that now or not, I think it's going to be evident in the first month if they were to go with the same group, which I don't think they will. I think they'll start making alterations at the trading deadline, because I think they'll look at it, and John will look at it and know that, hey, that's probably not a good fit. And he'll want to go after some guys that he wants to.
At the draft, I think, right? That's when they'll make the alterations, I think.
Well,
I think it'll be a work in progress, I think, throughout the season as they change and they see who gets with the program early on, because we can talk about moves happening in the off season, but in some cases, sometimes that's easier said than done.
Yeah.
In terms of certain contracts being able to be moved. So then you are through a case of, hey, as much as you want to turn things around quickly, they're going to need to figure out who can graft themselves onto the program and who is going to be looking to say goodbye by the deadline. So I don't know necessarily this is going to be, again, I don't think Tortorella turns any on a 4-year contract in this case and knows that everything's necessarily going to be turned around in year one, as much as, the Flyers will publicly make a statement that this is a move to change
I agree with
this
you.
year. This is not a 1-year
thing out there. You're right. His view won't be out there because he's already doubled down, like in this article in The Athletic, about how it is going to happen this year and they are going to make these trades. And it's like, yeah, all of this is great, but if you burn more assets just to make this happen and it doesn't happen, then you are in it for the long haul anyhow. And so, yeah, I think you're right.
Don't you think, Kevin, that, for all we talk, all the like Tortorella brings in this like mystique and this aura and this like, oh, he's going to this bad guy or whatever. Don't you think he more than anyone else understands that that's his mystique going in and just uses it for his advantage?
Yeah, I mean, people really misunderstand what happens when Tortorella takes over. What happens is it's all about accountability. Like the one thing you're always going to get out of Tortorella is he's going to make the existing players better because he demands they get better.
Right.
If they don't get better. And if you look at historically at the players that he's had trouble with, they're not the star players. Seth Jones loved him in Columbus. The top players in the Rangers loved him.
Cam Atkinson. Let's look at what Cam Atkinson.
Yeah,
the minute the tweet comes out, it was let's go with his tweet.
I have talked to numerous players who have played for Tortorella who absolutely appreciated everything he does because they want to see everybody on the team pulling together as well. Right. Like he doesn't come in and start playing this, putting in this crazy system that everyone's got to figure out and everything else. It's very simple. Exactly. You got to block shots. You got to play hard. You got to be hard to play against. You got to be responsible defensively at all times. Now, if you don't want to do that, then I'm not going to play you. Now,
right. Well, that's the thing. Not everybody wants to do that, Kev, because Panarin didn't want to do it.
But it's a small percentage.
Yeah, sure, but it does happen. It happened with Panarin. It happened with Gaborik. It does happen. He's probably going to lose one player on the Flyers because he doesn't want to do it either.
Well, there's Pierre-Luc Dubois, right? Pierre-Luc Dubois is probably the prime example, right?
Right.
But he gave Dubois all kinds of chances before that happened. We're not talking about like he didn't do that at a training camp to Dubois.
Right. Yeah. But what I'm saying is that he hasn't exactly gone to Winnipeg and become a great player either. So
that's 25 goals. I mean, that's good.
But
good player.
Well, he was a good player in Columbus.
Yeah. What Tortorella tried to do with him in Columbus was make him into a center, which a lot of people thought that was the aim when Yarmo drafted third overall. And when he went to Winnipeg, the first thing he wanted to do, the first thing he told Paul Maurice was, "I don't want to play center." Right. So. There was something there in Columbus that I think
you shouldn't be saying what you're like to me, like the one player, if I was to take a Flyer player that is primed in his crosshairs that I would think eventually is going to be an issue would be Kevin Hayes, right? Kevin Hayes to me is the perfect example of an inconsistent player who's got skill.
Well, people in the chat are saying Konechny
doesn't always work hard.
Yeah, I think it's Konechny, but Hayes, he knows Kevin Hayes, so I think Hayes will get with it. I think it's Konechny that will.
I think Konechny.
It could be, but again, Konechny also when he was pushed when he gets his buttons pushed, he tends to respond. I remember quite a few times with Dave Hackstall, a couple times where he got taken off the ice and brought back on, and he played the key thing with Travis is I think it's a case of focus and commitment at all times. And that has always, I think, been the issue. I think the talent level is there. I think he can play a two-way game, but one thing's going to happen. We may be surprised and say that Konechny might end up being, if he follows sort of Cam Atkinson's lead somewhat here, he can potentially be a guy who could be a quintessential Tortorella forward.
I agree.
Yeah, I'm not going to bet on that, but I would.
I'm going with Anthony on that because I think Konechny and Atkinson are very similar. I think Atkinson is very similar to Konechny.
He plays so much more talent than Atkinson, but Atkinson plays so much harder that he gets the most out of his talent. Konechny doesn't really get the most out of it.
He plays like a Torts player. He's a pain in the ass when he's effective. But the problem is I mean, I haven't noticed Konechny being much of a pain in the ass the last year or two to play against.
But I think with Torts in there, interesting.
Well, the one thing you don't want to discount too, and people don't think about this, but what ends up happening on Torts teams, and I had this explained to me before, is the players all start to buy in, and then they turn on the other players. Like, I'm not saying, when everybody's playing together, and
Uh-oh.
Lost Kevin for a second.
The only other thing I would say is that it's happened on most Torts teams on defense. He will always convert, whether it's a righty, he'll put him on the left side, or it's a lefty, he'll put him on the right side to suit his purposes. He's done that almost on every team that I can remember.
I mean, he definitely loves a challenge. He's going to look at Konechny and he's going to love it. Like, he's going to go in there. He's going to be like, no, I think he's going to love it.
Konechny might not love it, but
yeah, we'll see.
I'm with Anthony on this. I think I am totally thinking that this is going to be the best thing that ever happened to Konechny.
It may. It depends on how he responds to it. I'm only going based off of previous times when he's had lineup, when he's at times where he's been taken out of the lineup. Travis's attention to detail gets a lot better.
Yeah.
But the problem for him is that he has to keep that level of detail for longer than a 10-game stretch, and then he starts to fall off. That's where I think Torts is gonna. That might be the benefit for him, is the fact that he knows he'll probably ride him particularly hard, and then we'll see obviously how he'll respond at that point. There's a few players certainly on this team. One player I'm certainly going to be interested to see is how Ivan Provorov responds. To John's tutelage as well.
Yeah, another one.
That's certainly something that's going to be interesting to see as the season goes on.
Now, in the last few minutes before we end the show, Game 2 of the Stanley Cup Final tomorrow night, so we get 2 days off in between games 1 and 2. Kev, I think that would sort of suit the needs of Tampa Bay, who they came back, tied the game, forced overtime. Colorado wins it. They've now, you can't use the excuse that they're not used to the altitude in Denver because they've been there for a couple days. I would expect them to come out a lot better in Game 2, like they did against Toronto and like they did against the Rangers, even though the Rangers won that game 2.
Yeah, I mean, that was the first time Vasilevsky had given up 3 goals in our first period in his 99-game playoff career.
Yeah, right.
And, a lot of people I saw on social media were talking about just, that very same thing, the altitude and, that sort of thing. But, I'm sure, Cooper, I saw where he said, the team that should have won did win.
Yeah, he did say that.
Yeah, and, he knows his team, can be better. But they've been like that in the postseason. And, we've talked about this throughout the playoffs where for most of the first couple of rounds, I didn't think they were very good. They were winning, but they weren't playing, and I've been concerned about them all year. But I thought they really sort of pulled it together against the Rangers. And in that first period, they weren't the same team as they were in the latter stages against the Rangers. But then, because they're the Lightning, they figured out, how to get themselves back in the game. And it was a good game. By the way, we should talk about I saw the Mike Russo column about please let this go 7, and I read that and I say it's nice that he actually wrote that because it really has been an entertaining playoff, and the fact that we have Colorado and Tampa, I mean that's it just doesn't happen like that. Usually we have a momentum team, sneaks in and they're not good enough and they run out of momentum. Like Montreal wasn't going to win.
Be where it comes to fruition. I agree with you.
Yeah. So the fact that we've got two really good teams, that's you do hope that it goes for a lengthy period. But I think it was Russ. didn't you say that it's one of those things where even though it feels like it should go 7 because they're good, that if one of them got on a roll, it could be a sweep.
Yeah, I did say that because and it would be Tampa that would have gotten the sweep. I don't think Colorado, but I'm going to say I think Colorado is going to win the second game because I don't know if Tampa on the road will be able to figure out how not to back up to cover the forwards, the best forwards on Colorado or their fast defensemen without giving up that space. If they do play tight, if Tampa does play tight, they're going to go around them. So they were backing up and they were giving up a lot of alleys and lanes for passing, and I don't know how they're going to clog that up.
The speed disadvantage for Tampa Bay in this series. I mean, people thought Toronto was a much faster team than Tampa. They may have been, but Tampa was able to combat that. The Rangers, the same thing. In game 1, I don't know if Tampa has an answer to shut down Colorado because their speed is throughout the lineup. Guys like Darren Helm were flying around like crazy.
Shushkin skates great. Like, that's down to your third line.
Yeah, I think Dallas is regretting that, letting that guy go, Russ.
Yeah, I think so. But it's just, Burakovsky, all those guys, it's going to be hard for them to cover. Now, I know everybody's going to count on Kemper giving up a couple bad goals, and he might, but Colorado has been able to outscore their problems all year. They have.
They really have. No, it really, so much of this series, in my mind, hinges on Victor Hedman, honestly. Like, I think Hedman is one of, it's just going to have a better game. Like, he's got to be.
Well, he does have to have it, but he is banged up too.
Yeah,
but he's the guy who can stop. He's the one guy that he can neutralize some of what.
Yeah, but he missed a sizable chunk of the third period in Game 6 against the Rangers, and he may be playing at less than everybody's playing at less than 100%. But he's somebody that Tampa needs to elevate and be a dominant player.
Yeah, Braden Point's a stationary guy. He's not going to do a lot against Colorado.
Yeah.
Right. No, I won 7 games too. It's just fun.
We all won 7.
A lot of fun. And, and I like the overtime. It's great having overtime Stanley Cup games too. I mean,
those are fun.
The best.
Except when the food runs out, then it's not fun.
Yeah, we've been to a couple of those. That's a media problem. We sent Michelle off to get us chips that one time. And
we did.
I'll never forget that.
There you go. Always thinking with your stomach.
We sent this one reporter off to get us chips, and
I don't know what that's
like. The same way. Kevin can't back out of this one. He's the same way, I'm sure.
She found them. She found those chips. Sure. I don't know how. All right. That's all, guys. Have a wonderful weekend. It's beautiful out there. Besides the game, get yourself outside. Do something fun. Remember, without the buzz, it is just hockey. We will talk to you all tomorrow. Enjoy the Tortorella press conference.
Monday.